Hi, this is Carl again, and this is part 2 of the discussion on the use of du and sie in German. Now, in part 1, what I mentioned was that in English we can only really use the terms of address Mr. and Mrs. X, where X stands for a surname, in order to lay down a degree of formality which exists between the speaker and the interlocutor, i.e. the person with whom we're speaking. Whereas in German, and certainly other European languages, we also have different pronouns which translate into English as you, which we can use to further give an indication as to whether we're wishing to be formal or informal with the person whom we're addressing. And in German, those pronouns, as I mentioned in part 1, are sie, translating as you, and used to address either one person or more than one person formally, and also du, the pronoun, again, which translates as you and is used to address one person on an informal basis. Also, we have as well the pronoun ihr in German, which translates into English as you, as in you lot or you guys, but in this particular conversation, in this monologue, what I'm dealing with are the two pronouns sie and du. Now, as I mentioned in part 1 as well, sie will be used to address someone with whom you're not acquainted, whereas du will traditionally be used to address very close friends and acquaintances, and as far as the Germans themselves are concerned, will be used to address members of the family, particularly the immediate family. Although, as I mentioned in part 1 as well, it was the case every so often that family members who didn't see one another all that often, and grandchildren who were addressing grandparents who also didn't see one another that often, would traditionally use sie or the du, although the use of du amongst family members has become the norm. Now, in English we can use the terms Mr. and Mrs. X, where X stands for surname, to lay down that degree of formality, whereas the pronoun you has neither a formal nor informal connection with it, and also obviously we have to use different words, we have to use a style of language in addition to that form of address, i.e. Mr. or Mrs. X, to give an indication as to the degree of formality which we're using to address any particular person. Now, very often in German, the case is that when you first meet an individual, especially in a business scenario, you will address that person as Herr or Frau, unless of course he or she is a non-native speaker of German, in which case you will use, for example, Mr., Mrs., Monsieur, Madame, Mademoiselle, and so on, in addition to using the pronoun sie. Now, what has tended to happen, especially in business context, but also in social contexts as well, is that we have a phenomenon which is developed known as the use of the pronoun sie, along with the Christian name, or in German Vorname, of the person with whom you are speaking. And this phenomenon has more than likely come about as a result of the fact that English-speaking people who work in businesses have a much more relaxed relationship with one another. The relationship is a lot looser than would be the case amongst the Germans. And so therefore, when we're speaking German with, for example, German-speaking business colleagues, when we work for an English-speaking company, by using sie, we can maintain the degree of formality which rightfully needs to exist between business associates, whereas the use of the Christian name tones down the level of formality, but not to the detriment that that professional relationship and the formality which it entails is lost completely. Now, I'll conclude this discussion in part 3 of this series of videos, but if you do have any questions, then do feel free to drop me a line or send me an email.